Live from the studio at the Northwest Florida School of Biblical Studies, this is Have a Bible Question, where you are part of the program. Now, let's go to the Bible for answers to your Bible questions.
We got a question came in from Brian McCary. Very good question here.
Yes.
I was trying to, in between, do a little bit of looking up some stuff, Troy. The word sheol is translated as pit or grave in the Old Testament, but is hell actually spoken about in the Old Testament? And if not, why? So that's a pretty good little question there, isn't it, Troy?
Oh, yeah, it's a wonderful question. I did the same thing when I saw that. I started looking up a few things, and just the word sheol itself and the New King James appears some 18 times, and there's some interesting verses that use it. One of those that is in Isaiah. Isaiah says that
14:11
in Isaiah 38.
Oh, okay.
Note 38, verse 10. It said, in the prime of my life, I shall go to the gates of Sheol. I am deprived of the remainder of my years. And so there's a good description, gives you a good idea of what's happening there. Because we talk about, for example, we'll do the New Testament equivalent of that in just a few minutes, I know, and that being Hades, when Jesus says the gates of Hades. And so, but the one that really stuck out to me, Guyton, and you're a King James guy, so this is going to be kind of interesting. Go to Jonah 2, verse 2, because in Jonah 2, verse 2, in the New King James, I'm going to read it, and then I want you to look at the King James that you got there. It says, and he said, I cried out to the Lord because of my affliction, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. Now, the New King James is different. Excuse me, the King James is different.
Well, because it's right and yours is wrong. No, that's a joke. If you watch it, that's a joke. All right, Jonah 2, verse 2. And I said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me. Out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou heardest my voice.
Now, isn't that interesting? So here are two different translations. One translates the word, and then the other one just uses the actual word. Now, the word Sheol is interesting because here is Jonah, and he's in the belly of the fish, and he's calling it Sheol. Now, what does Sheol mean? If you look up in the Brown Driver Briggs dictionary, it says that it has lots of different definitions, and it's the underworld, the grave, the pit. In the Old Testament, it's the designation of the abode of the dead, but it also means a place of no return, and the wicked sent there for punishment, and a place of exile. Now, that makes sense whenever you think about what Jonah was experiencing. He was separated from God. He was in a terrible place. Is a place of exile, a disgusting place if you think about being in the belly of a fish, and he calls it Sheol, which in the King James is translated as hell. He was in hell, a form of hell, while he was still alive.
Right. Exactly.
Just metaphorically. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. And I was, when we get these questions, we try and look up and see what some of the cases that we have of what's being taught, what influences. And so I was looking, and I found several articles immediately talking about, well, hell's not mentioned of in the Old Testament. I think what happens is, is the difference between Hebrew and Greek sometimes. But what he asked here is, if not in the Old Testament, why? I think we see a distinction of the emphasis in the Bible between Old Testament and New Testament. And yes. Bear with me as I explain that one, because what we have in the Old Testament is very historical, that we have starting in Genesis, and it's more than a book of history, but we have establishing who is the creator, who is God. His desire for all time was that he was motivated by love. He wanted man to be saved. But what it's revealing to us is the scheme of redemption. And the scheme of redemption, according to Genesis 3:15, going back to Genesis 12, and host of Old Testament passages, is about the coming of Jesus. And so all the Old Testament is really emphasizing this coming of the seed that will bless all nations. Now, once Jesus arrived, this is when we start seeing a greater understanding, and perhaps is why the passage talking about the Old Testament, the things written aforetime were written for our learning. But help me out, Jeff. I can't get the quote right.
Romans 15:4.
Yeah, but now commandeth, and this ignorance God winked at, but now commandeth all men.
That's Acts 17:30 and 31.
Yeah. And so when we look to that Old Testament, it wasn't so much about our eternal destiny as much as it was about Jesus coming to this world. It was through the Israelites, man's need of redemption. But once Jesus has come, there's almost this shift of more of our responsibility and the eternal consequences. And so that's why we see more of an emphasis in the New Testament. Thoughts about that, Troy?
Well, yeah, I think you're exactly right, because there were several things that Jesus spoke about, that all of his preaching had to do with a few different subjects. One was he was the Messiah. Two, that God the Father, he is helping man to know who God the Father is, that about love and about the kingdom. Well, all of that has to do, and he said it over and over, talking about heaven, and then also explaining hell and condemnation and how serious that is. You're exactly right, Guyton. Before the New Testament, before Jesus came, there was just this kind of understanding. You don't see any in-depth understanding. For example, when David, his child died, you remember what he said? He says, when he rose up and they said, "Why are you no longer mourning?" And he says, "Well, because he can't come to me, but I can go to him." Mm-hmm. So there's clearly an understanding of the afterlife,
the eternal nature.
The eternal nature. But as you so well explained it, it wasn't until Jesus came that he started giving us details about it and this emphasis. And why is that? Because he conquered death. And until he conquered death, really what good does it do to, and the scheme of redemption has come to an end, what good does it do to explain heaven or hell?
Until that redemption comes. Now, I think Hebrews 11 may help us understand that idea of that they understood eternal. They understood that they needed to do things in order to receive the kingdom, because if you look at Hebrews 11, verse 15, well, let's back up to verse 14. Hebrews 11, beginning in verse 14. It says, "For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country, and truly if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city." And so they had a concept of something beyond. Abraham never truly recognized the fulfillment of the land promise here. He realized it was for the seed to come, and then what this is telling us, even a spiritual country for which he was longing for.
Right, and said that they died in faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Looking forward to that. Matthew Oakchaney, we call him Oak, one of our graduates. He says, didn't the rich man Lazarus account take place in the Old Testament? Because Abraham told the rich man that his brothers had Moses and the prophets, let them hear them. Yes, and no, I wouldn't say in the Old Testament, but under the Old Testament law. I think that's what he was implying there, because while Jesus was speaking this, and it's not a parable that we have here, it's an actual event, but this event that he's referring to had taken place, and during the time of Jesus, we're still dealing with the law of Moses, and would have been that category of Old Testament law that was being faced. So good point that you made there, Matthew. Brian, I hope that answers the question.
Great question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. That was really, really interesting.